Hey, welcome back to Score on Business. And before the break, I was asking you about the difference in strong cultures and weak ones. And as you answer that, I have been good at getting successful business people on here. That what you're talking about is the most common, most important thing that comes up. So, yeah, tell us about strong or weak.
Yeah, so strong, weak, or if you want to think positive, negative. I think there's again a lot of different facets that play into that. But the most critical one, I think, what's at the core of a really successful and meaningful culture in a workplace is trust. When employees trust the owner of the business, when they trust the managers and the leaders in the business, when they trust the other employees in the business, then they can focus on doing their work. When they believe that other people are going to look out for them, that other people are going to lead them in the right direction, that's really meaningful, and it allows people to feel pretty safe and pretty comfortable in what they're doing, and they can focus their time and energy on doing really good work and contributing to the organization. When people don't feel like they can trust other people in the organization, when they don't trust the owner or the leaders or managers or their colleagues, when they're worried that people are going to take credit for their work, or they're worried that someone's going to put all the blame on them if something goes wrong, or they just don't trust that they can follow where the managers and leaders are trying to lead them. In those circumstances, people necessarily become more self-interested. They necessarily become more self-protective. It's kind of what we talked about the last time I was on the show in terms of when people feel unsafe, that triggers fight and flight reactions. And those are reactions that are designed specifically to help people feel safer in the moment. And so if we're putting a lot of time and energy into making sure that we're taken care of and our needs are met, and we're looking over our shoulder to make sure no one's trying to put a knife in our back, right, in the workplace, then that's time and energy and focus that's not spent on doing our work. So when we really have trust in organizations, that's just a great characteristic of high performance teams, high performance organizations, of healthy cultures. So trust is really at the heart of it, and when we get that part right, we really free everybody up to work together, to make sacrifices for one another, and to just really focus on doing great work. And that's really, at the end of the day, that's good for everybody.
Yeah. So when you know what you do is work with other companies and one of the things you work on is culture. So there would be companies you might engage where the leaders are not at all motivated, and they're, unless the leaders are motivated, there's nothing to talk about really. But for the ones where the culture is negative, but they want it to be better and they're willing to listen, what are some things you do, you help them with?
Yeah, so there's a couple things there. I mean, the first part of that, there's kind of two approaches that I recommend to companies when it comes to trying to either turn around a culture or build a stronger, more positive culture. The first part's pretty simple. It's really hire people that are going to reflect the kind of culture that you want, right? So if we're talking about trust is such a critical foundation of this, I mean, look for and hire people who are trusting. Look for people who are optimistic and who are positive. I mean, propensity to trust is an individual difference. It's a personality characteristic. Some people naturally look for the good in other people. They're going to assume you have good intentions until you prove otherwise. They're going to see opportunities and possibilities instead of obstacles and problems. That's just in their nature. That's how they view the world. And other people are more cynical and more skeptical and more mistrusting, and you have to prove it to them before they'll believe you. They'll assume you have bad intentions until you prove to them otherwise. And if you have an organization full of people who are pretty skeptical and mistrusting, it's going to contribute to a lot of there's going to be a lot of negativity, a lot of criticism, those sorts of things. So that's the first part.
Would you help them learn how to interview for that?
Yeah, so there's a couple approaches that you can use when it comes to trying to select people. One would be interviewing techniques. So there are some behavioral interviewing techniques that are helpful, and there's certain kinds of questions that are good to ask and others that are pretty easy for people to sort of fake their way through. So you want to avoid those kinds of questions, and you want to ask questions that are going to be more helpful in terms of really understanding people's level of optimism and trust and positivity. And then the other part of it is, I'm a psychologist, so I love to use assessment tools, and so there are also like personality instruments and things like that that are really helpful in terms of differentiating between people in terms of optimism and pessimism. So the other thing I would add to that is it's important to select people who meet the qualifications for the job, but I would treat optimism and trust as like a tiebreaker. Like if you have two fairly qualified candidates, go with the optimistic one, and then they're going to contribute to this more positive culture. So that's kind of like the first half of that answer is really just try to fill your organization with positive people. Then the second part is leaders, and you mentioned earlier, if the leaders aren't motivated to do it, there's not much to talk about, right? But if you've got leaders who are interested in building that sort of culture, then there's things that they can do, what I would call sort of investing in their trust portfolio, right? So what is it that they can do that will make them seem and be perceived as more trustworthy by people? And there's a whole bunch of things as leaders that we can do every single day in our actions and our decisions that help with that. And it's what I call the 3 C's of trust, right? So it's the first one is competence. So the example I would use is, let's say you were going to go skydiving, and it was the first time you're going to go skydiving, and you're going to do a tandem jump, which means they harness you to a skydiving instructor.
I want that guy to know what he's doing.
Well, there you go. That's exactly right. So you're harnessed to this individual, and you want to believe that skydive instructor knows what he's doing, right? That he's experienced, that he's expert, he's knowledgeable, all those sorts of things. So we want to believe that he has that expertise. That's going to be really important. Same thing in our leaders. We want leaders who are knowledgeable, who are expert, who are experienced, who are good thinkers, who are intellectually curious, so they don't think they have all the answers, they continue to learn. So as leaders, we can exhibit some of those kinds of things that give people confidence that we know what we're doing, and if we don't know what we're doing, we're learning, how to do it, right? So that they can have that confidence. The second C is care. You also have to believe that skydive instructor cares about getting you safely on the ground. Now, in that example, you kind of assume it, right? Because he wants to get on the ground safely, so you assume, that he's going to get you on the ground safely. But what if the day you showed up for to do the skydiving, I said to you, well, your skydive instructor is suicidal and homicidal? I mean, that's a silly example, but the point is, it illustrates that now all of a sudden you'd be a lot more concerned about, does he really care about getting me on the ground safely, right? And that's the same kind of thing here. We have to believe our leaders care about us as people and as employees.
I love the saying, people don't care what you know until they know that you care.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So when employees know that we care about them as people and as employees, then that's another contributor to building that kind of culture of trust. So there's a whole bunch of things that we can do as leaders that are much more employee focused than they are sort of bottom line focused, right? So making investments, listening, there's a bunch of things there we can do. And then the third C in the trust sort of portfolio is consistency. So it's great if you're an expert, it's great if you have good intentions and you care about your people, but if you're not the kind of individual who consistently follows through and translates your competence and your care into action, then it doesn't really matter either. So if your skydive instructor may have been doing this for 20 years, knows what he's doing, he cares, he wants to get you on the ground safely, but he was up all night the night before and didn't get any sleep before he packed your chute, or he's got personal issues that are really distressing and really distracting, I believe that he knows what he's doing, and I believe that he cares, but he may not be in the right mental state to translate that into the right actions to make sure I get on the ground safely. So same thing with leaders. We have to walk the talk. We have to practice what we preach. We have to be consistent in fulfilling the commitments that we make to people. And when we do that, that also builds trust that people can have in us.
Good. Well, we'll take a break and be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back.